We will get started, everybody. Hello, it's so exciting to be here at this event. My name's Terry. I'm going to be the moderator for today. I am the head of media at FemTech Lab and FemTech Live. So if you don't know about us, FemTech Lab is Europe's first FemTech focused accelerator. We help young superstars in the FemTech space get their product to market. And as part of that, we also run FemTech Live, which is a media site completely dedicated to raising the voice of the FemTech space. And so we have investment topics, opportunities, and different trends on that site. And what I really love about my job is that I get to see the fledgling startups through our accelerator program, and then the kind of big dogs of FemTech through my work at FemTech Live. And I think this year has been so exciting for FemTech. We've seen bigger investments, bigger interest, and a lot more publicity for FemTech. But I think a lot of us in this audience will still hear that FemTech is a niche. And I personally don't believe that, and I'm sure nobody else on this panel does. And that's not just because over 50% of the population are women, but it's also because, as today's panel will show, FemTech is a lot more than just periods and pregnancy. And with FemTech, we can create a fairer and better world for everyone. That's because I think we know that better health outcomes for women mean better health outcomes for everybody, but also better economic outcomes, better educational outcomes, and healthier lifestyles for all. And I think most importantly, that's because we know that longevity and healthy lifespan starts pre-conception in the womb. And so the more we look after women's health outcomes, the better and more healthy outcomes we'll have for everybody. So I'm really excited to be here today, and I'm really excited to showcase our panel. And I just think that all of our panelists here today are at the helm of longevity and lifespan in terms of FemTech, and I think that's so exciting. So we're going to hear from people who are providing women with smart and seamless tools to know themselves better. We're going to meet panelists who are focusing on kind of the hormonal health of women across a lifetime. But most importantly, we're going to meet panelists who are improving research and understanding of the female body and placing women's health front and center. And I think that's the most important thing for longevity and lifespan. Without further ado, let me introduce you to Dr. Barbara Hanna, who's going to be talking about menopause care.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Barbara Hanna. I am a certified menopause specialist and a gynecologist. And today I am going to talk to you about menopause care and present to you a women's journey to midlife wellness. I am the founder of My Menopause RX, which is a digital health company devoted to menopause care. So this is just a little bit about me. And in my objectives of today's talk are threefold. As a gynecologist, as a menopause specialist, and the founder of a digital health company, the doctor in me feels compelled to introduce you to some common menopause symptoms. I'll present the need for telemedicine solutions for menopause care, and I'll define the elements to a satisfying digital patient care journey. So all women experience menopause, either naturally or surgically, and menopause itself is not a disease. It's a time and a period of life where the natural process of aging takes over in women. Women are living longer, they're spending over a third of their lives in perimenopause and menopause, and access to menopause care is clearly a path to healthy aging. And so it's well documented that better health during perimenopause and menopause can decrease a woman's long-term health risk for chronic disease later on in life. And so as you can see on the slide, high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, anxiety, depression, osteoporosis are all chronic diseases that women have an increased risk of once they enter perimenopause. In addition to that, there's racial and ethnic disparities, and each woman's menopause journey is completely unique. No two are alike. And sadly, women of color enter perimenopause and menopause earlier. And those women that experience menopause earlier have an increased risk of chronic disease and longer through their lifetime. So for today's presentation, I thought it would be interesting to walk through a traditional menopause health journey that too many midlife women are experiencing. I will then show you how the digital menopause clinic, My Menopause RX, transforms that journey into something empowering for women. So meet Michelle. She's a 48-year-old female with regular monthly periods. And so Michelle has not been sleeping well for 2 years. She has hot flashes during the day, but denies any night sweats. Her weight has been creeping up and most of it seems clustered in her belly. She's short-tempered and moody at times. And lately, Michelle has noticed that she's more forgetful, she's foggy thinking, and she finds it more difficult to concentrate. She's really afraid that her boss may take notice at work that it takes her longer to complete tasks due to her brain fog. Michelle's active. She exercises daily by walking her dog around the block. And she admits that she cooks on weekends, but brings in takeout during the week because between caring for her family and her parents, along with her busy work schedule, she can't seem to find time to cook at home. And so we talk about symptoms. Greater than 75% of women suffer from menopause symptoms. And unlike our thought process in the past, we now know that symptoms last on average 7.4 to 10 years in women. And 33% of women have symptoms that are severe enough lasting greater than 10 years. And the biggest thing I'd like to point out is that menopause is not a disease of women in their 50s and 60s. The menopause transition begins in a woman's early 40s for many people, and that is the time where these changes are taking place in their body. So back to Michelle. After an exhaustive internet search, Michelle suspected her symptoms were due to perimenopause. Michelle admits she's not been to a doctor since the birth of her last son 8 years ago. As a working mom, she's just too busy to make time for herself, and she prioritizes her work and her family over her own self-care. So looking at the typical health journey that women experience, there's a lack of scheduling of appointments that are on demand. There's long wait times for new patient appointments. The average is 24 days. And with the time that it takes to go to and from work or to and from home, and then waiting in the office, an average of 59 minutes, all for the average of spending 18.21 minutes with a physician. So Michelle turns to the internet again to find an OBGYN near her, and she's redirected to its practice website, but she's completely disappointed that she can't book online and forced to call the office. So the following day, while she's at work, she calls the office to schedule, and she's sad to learn that the first available appointment is 18 days out, and worse, it's in the middle of her workday, forcing her to miss work. So she arrives at the office 15 minutes early as requested to complete her intake forms, and she sits in the waiting room for another 20 minutes before she's ushered into the exam room, where she waits again for 15 minutes before her new doctor arrives. Her new doctor goes through her medical history, looks at her review of systems, and completes her exam. She recommends standard wellness testing, and she informs Michelle that menopause is a natural transition and most women suffer and manage just fine. Michelle's sent on her way, frustrating and feeling dismissed. And the sad fact is that most physicians, OBGYNs and primary care physicians, get little to no formal medical training treating perimenopause and menopause. And so Michelle goes back to the internet, her source of information, and she finds My Menopause RX, our digital health clinic for menopause care and midlife wellness. And after work, she creates an appointment. She appreciates the choice to use her health insurance or pay a fixed, transparent out-of-pocket fee. She completes her medical intake and menopause questionnaire, and immediately she feels validated that her symptoms are going to be addressed. The My Menopause RX proprietary technology uses integrative health histories, validated health screeners, and menopause questionnaires, which will enable the future use of artificial intelligence to help guide evidence-based risk and medical decision-making. So Michelle logs onto her HIPAA compliant dashboard the following day to begin her appointment. And at My Menopause RX, the HIPAA compliant dashboard serves as the woman's command center for her menopause care, putting all the needed resources right at her fingertips. The dashboard contains unlimited messaging to the clinical staff, integrated video visits. You don't need to launch a separate program to launch your visit. Personalized visit summaries, the ability to self-order lab testing on demand, all of her lab results with review comments, and point-of-care payment systems. So later that day, Michelle's chatting with her girlfriend about the ease and convenience of her online menopause visit, but sadly, she can't remember a thing that her specialist recommended to her. The reality is, even with the clearest of mind and no menopause symptoms, it's well documented that 40 to 80% of information provided by healthcare providers is forgotten immediately by patients. And so access to education is key to help improve wellness and self-care. And so downloadable personalized visit summaries that include education, lifestyle, supplement recommendations, and medication treatment options are readily available on the woman's dashboard at My Menopause RX. She's even encouraged to share her information with her primary care healthcare provider. So 8 weeks later, Michelle is enjoying improved sleep and concentration. She admits she hasn't felt this great in years, and she now feels empowered. Michelle's making a commitment to improve her self-care. She's learning and taking the time to cook at home healthier meals. She's increasing her exercise, and she's on a path to improving living. And so My Menopause RX is the journey to midlife health and wellness for women. Treating menopause and improving the health of midlife women is so much more than just writing a prescription. It's focusing on the whole person, lifestyle, mind and body. It's essential to help midlife women to find their path in health and wellness. The My Menopause RX Digital Menopause Clinic is helping women feel better to live better. Suffering is out, menopause care is in. Thank you so much. I look forward to your questions later.
Thank you so much, Barbara. That was amazing. And I think it's so important we talk about menopause more. And I think showcased in that presentation, we need to meet women in their homes and really increase that access to education. So thank you. That was really insightful. Next, we have Debbie Garner, but I'm unsure if she has arrived yet. So perhaps I will.
Yes, I'm
Debbie,
here.
if you're there. Oh, you are here. Sorry,
Yes.
I couldn't see you on my screen there. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Debbie Garner now. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, we'll continue with that theme of some of the symptoms of menopause by talking about pelvic organ prolapse. So I will introduce myself in a moment, but I titled this talk, Let's Talk About Pelvic Organ Prolapse, as 50% of women will suffer from some pelvic organ prolapse in her lifetime. And given the number of women on this call, I think many of you could agree that not enough of us are talking about this, what it is and what we can do about it. So I will introduce myself. I'm Debbie Garner. I'm co-CEO of FemSelect. We are a startup in this space with a mission to make a lasting impact on women's health and developing innovative technologies to improve outcomes for women. As I believe many of us on the call are dedicated to a similar mission. I've been with the company about 6 years. We are actually now in the commercial stage. We are selling the product. So I'll talk a little bit about prolapse and a little bit about our solution, but it's pretty exciting to already be in the commercial stage, but this is our first commercial product. So let's talk about pelvic organ prolapse and what it is. I have to say, when I joined the company 6 years ago, even though I've been in healthcare commercialization for over 25 years and even spent some time in women's health earlier in my career, I'd never heard the term prolapse. I knew about pelvic floor issues and I knew about Of course, after childbirth, often leaking or other such lovely symptoms. But I didn't actually even know the term. And so I imagine there are many women out there who are not nearly as familiar with what it is. And it literally is the dropping or the sagging of one or more of the pelvic floor organs. So that could be the uterus, it could be the bladder, it could be the rectum. It is usually the result of a combination, perhaps vaginal childbirth, could even be just one child, sometimes depending on how they come out and how many come out, that can have an impact, as well as genetics. Menopause plays a role, estrogen levels, etc. And when the pelvic floor loses that support, then the organs can sag. As you can see here, this is a picture of the uterus that's dropped. This is really only at introitus, but we've seen many women come in where the uterus is even beyond introitus and outside the body. And one can only imagine the impact that that has on women. First of all, the discomfort, maybe even embarrassment, to the point sometimes of not even wanting to go to speak to a medical professional about it. Very often routine GYN exams do not even include some kind of pelvic floor screening, which is difficult. There are some countries in Europe that are much better than perhaps the US is at screening for pelvic floor disorders. And there are probably 25 million women in the US affected in some way by pelvic organ prolapse. So what are the symptoms? It could be incontinence. It could be constipation or fecal incontinence. It could be, and is often, especially if it's uterine prolapse, heavy feeling in the pelvic area, feeling like sitting on a ball. So as you can imagine, that would have an impact on daily activities, even just such as walking your dog or bringing groceries in the house, carrying a toddler, and impacts daily living. Now, of course, not life-threatening, but definitely impacting daily life. Now, what are the choices for women in this category? I have to say the choices are not great. We believe, until our solution came along. But even putting that aside, at the moment, the way most women manage it is either a severely invasive procedure, something like a hysterectomy or an invasive pelvic floor procedure. Or on the other end, it could be something like just simple Kegel exercises or pessary. A pessary is a piece of plastic that gets inserted into the vagina to hold up the organs that are sagging. Sometimes it's there continuously. There are some that are disposable, there are some that only need to be changed every few months. Many women, however, discontinue use of a pessary after just 2 to 3 years due to discomfort, bleeding, smell, sometimes bacteria. So for many women, that's not a complete solution. And then on the other end, you have surgical interventions, which tend to be long, invasive, long recovery. Some women just don't want to have their uterus removed in a hysterectomy. And actually, even in 20% of the cases, after the uterus is removed, the tissue that remains can prolapse through, and that would be called vaginal vault prolapse. So that's not a great solution there either. And so what you find is, if you look, for example, these numbers are based on the US market research study, that half the women, we call them watchful waiting, are sitting out there doing nothing about their prolapse. They're just waiting really for it to get worse, to it to interfere more with their daily activities, to the point where they must go ahead with some kind of solution. And that's actually, in my eyes, not a great situation to be in, where half of women with a specific problem are not even seeking treatment actively for it. And this data actually was based on insurance claims data. So we know that these women actually had a diagnosis of prolapse and then did not go ahead to do anything about it with a treatment. So that is discouraging, to say the least. And then, if you look at it on the spectrum, some of the existing methods, like I mentioned before, are just very invasive. You could have 6 to 12 weeks to recover from a pelvic floor, repair surgery. So there's not a lot of options there. So our solution that we've developed is a minimally invasive solution. It enables, similar to other transvaginal procedures, enables the implant of a very tiny anchor attached to a suture into the sacrospinous ligament and the pelvic floor, and then enables lifting up the pelvic floor in a minimally invasive fashion. And so what we think this will do for the market is to help create a place that's in between highly invasive options and non-invasive options, and offer an option to women who have been diagnosed and have done nothing about it, or even those who are sitting on the sidelines and haven't even bothered to go get a diagnosis, and just don't even see an option. And there are many, many women out there like that. If you compare the end-place solution to some of the other solutions on the market, you see it is similar in that it has anchor and suture fixation, but there is no other minimally invasive option on the market, and that's what makes our entrance to the market so unique. Here's just a picture of what the device looks like on the finger of a surgeon. There actually comes two devices together. It's the majority of the implant is this tiny little anchor here, 4 millimeters wide, but this is how a physician's finger would enable implantation. It's just very small and very sharp. It enables implantation in a very minimally invasive fashion. And we have quite a bit of data suggesting that this is safe, effective. We have now 4 years of data on this solution. We've been studying it for years, both here in Israel. We are an Israeli company, but also now in the US and Germany in a larger post-marketing study, and have launched just prior to COVID, unfortunately, but have launched more broadly in the US market to make it available to women all over the United States. I know I'm running towards the end of the 10 minutes. I'm going to skip ahead, but what we've found is that both physicians and patients are very happy having a minimally invasive option, and we hope that this brings new opportunity to women in this category. So just a quick summary of the company. As I mentioned earlier, we are in commercial stage, which is a unique opportunity as a startup. And we have just partnered with a gynecology company called Lena Medical in the US to make the product available across the US and Israel. And we do hope that we'll be getting to the European market in 2022. So that's a little bit about us and a new opportunity in the pelvic health space. And I think that's maybe 9 minutes.
Perfect. You really kept to time there. Thank you. And I think it's really interesting to see the similarities between what Barbara was talking about and what you're talking about as well. And I'm sure that will be a common theme around kind of shame and stigma, lack of medical knowledge and research, and women just not wanting to seek treatment. And I'm sure we'll come on to that in our discussion. So thank you so much. Incredible.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to pass on to the next person on our agenda, which is Hipaa Shafiv, and I'll hand over to you.
Hi, everyone. Just one sec. Okay, I hope you can see my screen. So I'm Hipaa Shafiv. I'm also from Israel. I'm a biomedical engineer, and prior to doing what I'm doing right now, I was working on heart-assist device and blood flow. And I like to say that now I'm working also on blood flow, but in different location of the body. And I'm also the founder, the inventor, and the CEO of Gals Bio, where we are developing a novel vaginal platform for women wellness and health, which we call Tulipon. And today I want to share with you our vision of what we are planning to do, where we're planning to turn Eve's curse to a blessing. So half of the world population experiences natural genital biopsy and blood shedding once a month for a period of about 40 years of their life. And this natural effluent contains a lot of biomarkers to women's health. As you can see, it contains vitamins, minerals, various kinds of cells, and a lot of info, a lot of data that, as we all know, currently is simply being discarded. Just for the purpose of this presentation, I did a small research, and I plugged in into Google Scholar how many results do I get from different keywords. So obviously from blood biomarkers, you can see there are more than 2 billion results. Urine biomarkers, there are also a lot of results. Saliva, much less. Sperm biomarkers, there are still 76,000, and I guess people do not like to deal with feces biomarkers because there aren't a lot of not too many research about that. And then I also wanted to see the difference between men and women biomarkers. And then I just started to play because I was intrigued. And as you can see, for dog feces biomarkers, we have 18,000 results, where for menses biomarkers, there are only 14,000 results. And I'm sure it won't come to you as a surprise that menses over the years was hardly researched. And there is hardly any advancement in this area since the development of humankind, and a lot of things, and this is inside the fact that we can learn about our body even from simple things. So we know that normal physiological menstrual bleeding can indicate about on women's health. So we know that menarches can start from about 12 or even less, sometimes even 8 years old to 15. We know the duration it should be between 2 to 7 days. We know that menses amount is between 20 to 80 ml, where the average is 35 ml. So this is one thing that most women that I meet, they don't know. Like usually I give some lectures for young women, and I ask them, how much do you think you bleed? So usually I get the answer that a can of Coke. So the reality is that we are way away from that answer, and it's only a shot of alcohol, and currently we don't even measure this. This is a very viable biomarker that can give us an indication of our health, and we don't have the tools to measure how much are we bleeding. And according to the literature, a lot of women, you will ask them, how much are you bleeding? And they would say either Niagara Falls, and while there is about 15% of the women, or between 15 to 20% that are considered high heavy flow menstruator, and this has indication on their health, but usually after women where it is investigated and it's researched, apparently most women are not heavy menstrual bleeders, although they might think that they are. Another issue is normal menstrual cycle length, as you can see the numbers here. And nowadays, thanks to apps like Clue and many other apps that are available in the market, so we can finally measure this, and we can know if there is something wrong. And as we heard very good lectures here on menopause, this is also can serve us. The age indication can serve us an indication on our health. So in spite of the scarce research, recently there is some research that is being carried on this subject. One of my favorite article was done in 2012. Really very good work was done. A person from New York took menstrual blood in he's actually the first one to ever examine menstrual menstrual fluid in a scientific manner and tested for proteins, for various kind of proteins. And he actually found that menstrual blood contained unique proteins that are not available in venous blood, and they can serve for various kinds of diseases, including cancer, for biomarkers for cancers and various kinds of health diseases and health indications. I have to mention that this research on the left, it was done not from the point of view of women's health or monitoring women's health. It was done from the point of view of forensic. The police had problems to identify menstrual blood, to differentiate menstrual blood from venous blood, to prove a murder with where the victim was not found. So this was the goal of this research. The idea was not to treat women, but other groups are also now following up, and there is more here. You can see from 2019, and here are a little bit more research that is done today on menstrual effluent. When you look at the landscape of what we have today for testing our health for various biomarkers, so here I present venous blood. So we know that today there is a lot of ways and a lot of labs that you can finger or sample some of your blood and send it to a lab to get some diagnostics. And also lately there are more and more at-home venous blood, but it's very limited due to accuracy and due to sampling. You cannot sample a big amount of fluid. So obviously, since menstrual fluid is you can get so much of it, as I mentioned in the beginning, 35 ml. So obviously it has advantage when you look at home testing over than doing venous blood testing. So there are 3 companies today in the market, at least that I know, that I'm aware of, that are doing menstrual blood testing. And here are some of the results, at least the ones that are published. So this is really only one article from each that shows that there is a correlation for these markers between menses and venous blood. One of the biggest problems that they all use dry blood kits. So they are very limited also in amount, also in accuracy, and it has to be sent to a lab. And this is where Gals Bio is coming into the picture. So what we did in Gals Bio is basically we first developed a new way to collect menstrual effluent. So here what you can see, and here I can show you in real life if you look at me. This is tulipone. It's basically it's a menstrual cup that collects the fluid, the menstrual effluent, But it's used like a regular tampon with an applicator. It's disposable. It has a locking mechanism, so everything that is collected actually remains inside, even when after taking it out. And in the future, what we would like to do, we would like to leverage all the fluids that we are collecting for doing health diagnostic screening, and also monitoring, since, as we all know, it's once a month. So we can actually monitor over time changes if a woman changed their diet and or was sick and became healthy. So we can give this as a very important health indicator. So as I mentioned,
I'm gonna ask you one more minute, just because we're running out of time a little bit.
I'm at the end. Thanks, Terry. So as I mentioned, Lipon is basically, it's a tampon that functions like a menstrual cup. It can be used for 12 hours. And the first phase, we're gonna actually have Tulipon sent to a lab, like it's done currently with blood tests for analysis. But in the next phase, our goal is basically to give at home, with the combination of a smartphone, the women the ability to screen and monitor their health. So here is a short summary, since we are short of time, so I'll skip this. And again, I'm Hipaa Shaviv, and I will be happy to answer all your questions.
Thank you so much, Hipaa. I think you're getting a lot of love and interest in the comments. It's such an amazing innovation. And I think you brought up this idea that there's just such a wealth of topics in terms of women's health that are under-researched. I find it like incredible that menstrual blood has never been researched or not researched as much. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. I'm going to hand over to Rachel now. Yeah, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rachel Braun Shirl. It's a pleasure to be with everybody today. There's lots of folks. I'm thrilled to come after Hipaa and Debbie, both of whom I've had the pleasure of working with. My topic today is longevity on language in 10 minutes or less. So I'll speak quickly and just try to drop some nuggets that will catalyze some conversation. In the way of background, I'm a women's health and sexual wellness pioneer. I'm a FemTech and sex tech expert. I spend a lot of time with companies from menstruation through menopause, figuring out how to drive top line growth. I've written a book in the space. I have a podcast in the space, which I'm always looking for interesting people to appear on, which is really where my focus is, which is the intersection of patient care, unmet needs, unanswered questions, and the businesses being created to respond to those unanswered questions. So this is not new when you're on a FemTech analytics webinar, that this is huge. There are huge opportunities. There are huge problems or challenges that require thoughtful and well thought out and important solutions. So close to 51% of the US population is female. 25 million adult Americans suffer from urinary incontinence. 75 to 80% of them are women. Debbie mentioned that in her discussion. A third of women never experience an orgasm, which is not as related to the previous two presenters, but I'm just putting it in the context of how big these populations are who are looking for better solutions. 45% of pregnancies are mistimed every year in the US. And by 2025, women who experience menopause will make up 12% of the entire global population, which is 1.1 billion women. All of this is just to say, this is big. These populations are big, the challenges are big, the need for solutions are even bigger, and it ranges across the spectrum of a woman's sexual and reproductive health life. It's not just menstruating, it's not just menopause, it's not just trying to get pregnant, it's also trying not to be pregnant. It's incontinence, it's the symptoms of menopause, it's fertility, it's infertility. And each one of these areas, some of them we've seen a lot more progress in terms of solutions, but they're all big markets. And for me, that's important because not just because women's health and FemTech and sex tech are important, but because when you look at it from an investment opportunity, there are also huge opportunities to grow big businesses, some of which you've heard about today. And certainly from the earliest presentation, the process of getting care today certainly has a lot of room for improvement. So when I talk about language, and this is something that I've been sort of maniacal about since I've been in this space for, the last 14 or 15 years, is we need a common vocabulary. What we often hear and what I'm often asked, as I'm sure many folks on the line are, is what do you think of the word FemTech? What do you think of sex tech? Is that accurate? And from my perspective, I'm okay if those words aren't perfect, if they're not complete. I think the most important piece is to start a conversation. So I'd rather argue with someone about what's in and out of FemTech than not even have a starting point. So we need some common vocabulary to talk about these issues. You have to think about this in the context of very variable quality and rates of sex education around the world. Some places it's mandated, some places it's mandated and it's not required to be scientifically accurate. So here we have a place where we're not comfortable with the vocabulary, if we even have one, and you mix that together with the lack of successful sex education, which I would define as resulting in some of the statistics that I reported earlier. You mix that together with this idea, and I hope before I die that we're not using the word taboo in any sentence that's around women's sexual and reproductive health. I once heard a business leader say the funniest, it's really great line, which is 50% of people are born with a vagina and 50% of the population spend the rest of their time trying to get back in one. So it's not like this is a random narrow piece. And I hope, even in the context of FemTech analytics, we'll be saying words like vagina and pelvic prolapse and anal problems and incontinence, because it's really important that we use that language and we take away this feeling of taboo. And one of the interesting parts of that is the more you talk, the more you get comfortable. So when I've hired people to work with me in various female health companies, I literally say, we say the word vagina, we say the word vulva, we say the word clitoris. That doesn't have to be comfortable for you. But if you want to work here, you should be prepared, or you want to work in this industry, that's part of our language of our business. It's not flippant, it's not casual, it's not just to be salacious. It's part of the business and the products and services that companies that are represented on this webinar are processing. And we're not helped by the fact that so many people on the call know that advertising and media platforms really still place a lot of restrictions. One of my favorite, not because it's enjoyable, but because it's so ironic, is that with Facebook, erectile dysfunction goes through their family planning algorithm, which I've always found particularly ironic, because we know from statistics that most of the usage is for older men and people looking for performance enhancement, and is never really talked about in the context of family planning. When you look at a company that tries to talk about vaginal dryness, what you see is that it goes through an algorithm so that it is tagged as inappropriate and too sexual in nature. And because I think in all things, we need to have a sense of humor about ourselves, ask 1,000 women, I've asked 100 women, when you think of vaginal dryness is too sexual in nature, even on the top 1,000 descriptions that you would give. I mean, it's a reality of what women experience in menopause and in other, due to other conditions and medications and other challenges they have. And if we can't say the words again, how do we communicate with our customers, and how do companies educate? One of the important roles that companies are playing is they're providing the education. So you see companies like Ember, which has a wave, which has a device that interrupts the autonomic nervous system to manage thermal wellness. And what that translates into is that it changes your experience of hot and cold temperature. And it's particularly useful in women experiencing hot flashes. Or a company like Pulse, who's elevated the lubricant experience so that women now have a device and a formulation that is warm, that's touchless, that's hygienic. These are important businesses. Those are just two that I called out, but there are many more, really focused with a very measured approach, with the consumer at the center of it, to provide better solutions for some of the things that we experience in the course of going through life. And we all know that a lot of these issues and the discomfort and the societal inhibitions around talking about sex and sexuality, especially as it relates to women's pleasure, does have an impact on how available funds are to build businesses, to finance and build businesses in this space. So what does that mean for us? The responsibility is ours. And I think the people in this industry have really raised their hands and taken the mantle and said, you know, if society isn't going to do it, if global sex education isn't going to do it, if parents either don't want to do it or don't know how to do it, we're going to take the lead and we're going to be offering some of that education. And that means providing a language. It means telling people, you know, about the body parts, about the real names, about what their bodies are capable of. And I'm not just talking about children. There are plenty of research studies that show that adult men and women don't have really just fundamental information about their genitals and how they might connect and what's connected to what and how you might experience pleasure. And it's our responsibility to destigmatize that. One of the things that I always find amazing is that there's a growing body of research that suggests that children who are taught the appropriate and the accurate, medically and physiological accurate names for their body parts and what they do and what they're capable of and what happens when they interact are much likely to report instances of abuse or trauma. And I always bring that up because if it's not compelling enough to say it's important because there are billions of women experiencing things around the world, you know, I say, think about the generation that's coming up, that we want to be armed with the language and the tools and the knowledge to make more informed decisions potentially than certainly I was prepared to make and many people in the space were prepared to make. So we have to continue to speak loudly and proudly about these issues, about the challenges, about the successes. It can't only be, you know, it's hard to get funded in this space. We also want to hear about the companies that are going public. We want to hear about the companies who raise enormous amounts of capital. And just to put that in perspective, in calendar year 2021, over $1 billion has been put into this space of women's health, FemTech, and sex tech. That is cataclysmic. I don't even know what the adjective is to describe how exponentially giant that is compared to where we were. So we're making a lot of progress, but we have to stay in it. And so it is incumbent upon people in the space and people on this call and people in this community to ask questions, to raise these issues, to answer the questions so that we can all associate this space that we're so passionate about with joy, love, with solutions, with quality of life instead of shame, fear, or ignorance. And with that,
Rachel,
I think I used my 10 minutes.
Yeah, I don't want to cut your energy because everybody's really buzzing from it. But yeah, that's your 10 minutes up. I give you an extra.
And I look forward to continued conversations, and it's an honor. Thank you, Terry, for having me in such an august group of professionals and people who are passionate about this space.
Thank you so much, Rachel, and such great energy. I feel like you've impassioned the audience there. And I think exactly what you're saying. As a sex educator in a previous life, I have met teachers who are 40, 50 years old and cannot label a vulva. And I think there's so much more to do about that, and the FemTech space can play a huge role. So yeah, thank you. I will now hand over to our next speaker, Dr. Isabel, and I'll hand over to you.
Yes, hello, thank you. So I want to talk today about a topic that's somewhere in between where Barbara left off, so the massive rise of risks for us women after menopause, and a little bit where Hipaa started, the universe of confusing and abundant biomarkers. And basically, I'm the founder of Uplife.io, which is a health tech company in Switzerland, and meanwhile rolled out in several countries of Europe. And our main mandate is to enable women to get into the driver's seat of their own health journey. So it has a lot to do with fitting into our daily routines. Normally, women don't prioritize their own health journey as much as other kids or men do. And basically, how can we do that? And I want to present you our approach that we took on that. First, let me take one step back. Why are non-communicable diseases? So exactly that, what corona is not. So not diseases that spread over the air, but the diseases that are rooted in our lifestyles, our genes, microbiome. What is that and how big is it? If you look at the European numbers, it's enormous. It's 1.2 trillion each, just in Europe, each year that we are spending on, to a big part, avoidable diseases. And if you put it into relation with our economic value that we create, it's 3.3% of our European GDP. That's a lot. Doesn't sound like a lot, 3.3, it's minor. I give you a comparison. We gain by digitization, which is definitely a huge topic. No one would disagree there, I guess. With digitization, we gain 2.2% GDP growth every year. And we waste and sadly risk people falling in of NCDs at a large and growing rate of 3.3%. So we should do something about it. So let me show you how we approached it and how we collaborated and created patient-centric programs out of it. So UpLife is an intensive lifestyle intervention program, which helps you personalize your health interventions to maximize the benefit out of it, because there's a lot to be done, right? We know that we should eat healthier, exercise more, nada. Yeah. Normally on 1st of January, we still stick to it, and then it gets super complicated because behavior is involved. So we tried to break some of the routines and make it easier to get into these routines. Let me start with nutrition. So normally, like everything, it starts with a great plan and then it hits your life. So we start with personalized meal plans that are adapted to your needs and that factor in over 700 single variables. We will see later what it's factor in. We prepare shopping list for our users, and we use, whenever life is getting into the way of your meal planning and meal prepping routines, we prepare a smart AI-driven personal traffic light. So our users can scan what they are eating and they get a very personalized feedback how well that contributes to their health goal. And you see how it looks on the screen. It's basically a small monitor up here that gives you an overview over your calorie intake. We've heard it already. Yeah, I mean, need to say that maybe menopause is one of the biggest driver of our programs, because women in this phase of their lives, they get really aware that something in their body changes, and they are medically right, because we've seen in Barbara's statistics that this is the fact. So a typical woman in menopause starts controlling her calorie intake. She starts tracking symptoms, and she gets health literacy provided based on her symptom patterns in the app. So that's the nutrition part. And let me show you, whoops, now I was too fast. And this is the intelligent traffic light. So basically I can scan whatever I want. Nothing is forbidden, but the app helps me afterwards to balance out a large pizza feast with red wine with my family the day after. So it tells me how much I could compensate the next day with a longer workout, or it tells me, or it cuts my calories the next day. So balancing out is a big topic. And then the next thing, what we observed in this stage of life, that we all, or most who are interested, wear trackers, and living with a semi-full circle gets, actually, we get used to it. So what we see that most users in our program stagnate at a certain level. They always do the same things, and they are stuck at a certain level of activity. So we help them with intelligent propositions what else they could do, and our goal here is basically getting the routines wider. So if you're always into cardio, we help them to integrate more strength, or also exercise that increase mindfulness. And then we get to the biomarkers. Biomarkers is a huge topic, but it's also very, very confusing. And not all biomarkers are as meaningful to each group as to another. So basically, what we came up is an AI solution that interprets biomarkers for the users. So first of all, we came up with an aggregate that just tells me how am I on track to achieve a health goal, or is it positive? Is it a positive development that I eat healthier, that I exercise more, that I track the right biomarkers, and are these biomarkers good enough? So we need a simple view of that to monitor our own health. And then secondly, we implemented for the more complex biomarker, we implemented AI algorithms that give you an indication if it's good or bad, because basically I track this data, and in the end, what I want to know if it's a good thing. And all these numbers are most confusing to most users. We realized in surveys that most users don't really understand what a heart rate variability is, what a resting heart pulse is, and how we should measure it, etc. Good. So that's the third thing. But what happens if my biomarkers don't look good? Then we create with our partners health ecosystems around people with menopause, for example, and we help them getting to the ground of it. For example, if you realize that symptomatic patterns indicate that this might be a beginning or a pre-diabetes, we offer these partners home lab tests to see what their long-term glucose levels are. And secondly, we work with European telemedicine providers in each country, that users who have really worrisome symptoms, that they can go reach out and have a discussion with a general practitioner on the phone at first. Who pays for these offers? It's the health insurers who do that without, I mean, the transaction happens directly via our platform, and they are covered in the European insurance schemes. So that is very quick. I know it was a long marathon. That is very quick, our approach on breaking this entity wave that we are seeing, and especially addressing women who are the most users of our program. As you can see, we have many program entries in the preventive space. In the FemTech space, we have 2 focusing on female fertility and menopause. And then we also have programs in the chronic space. And the handover between these programs is fluent, because as you can imagine, you can be in menopause, have a diabetes, and having nutritional allergies at the same time. So the program can cover that, but it's very helpful for users to start with a clear focus where they want to see results. Good. And guess what? It works. Simple routines in a good enough doses, administered daily, has a massive impact. After 3 months in our data, we see that 85% of the users lost weight, that 3 out of 4 reduced sedentary lifestyle or more active. And we can also see that blood pressure and blood glucose had been lowered significantly during the program. So maybe as a wrap up, yeah, that's the end. As a wrap up, we deliver highly individualized programs that focus on the reduction and the treatment of onsetting NCDs. And especially women in the phase of menopause appreciate that we create focus around meaningful interventions that they can do on their own, and then connecting them with the health ecosystem around the topic of menopause to interact with specialists when it makes sense. Good.
Awesome, thank you so much. And I think it's great to kind of look at a women's like holistic health, and I'm sure that that will come up in our discussions as well. So thank you. I'm going to hang over to Kate now. I'll let you go.
Hello, everyone. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I thank all of our speakers and the moderator for being here today. My name is Kate Butts. I'm a managing partner at Deep Knowledge Group, and I'm also a director of FemTech Analytics. A little bit about ourselves and the group. It's a consortium of for-profit and non-profit companies, and we have three main branches, including investment funds, as well as a number of analytical subsidiaries, of which you may have heard, such as Agent Analytics Agency or Deep Knowledge Analytics, as well as a number of others. We have been historically focused on the topic of longevity or health span, as it applies both to men and women. However, historically, starting from 2019, we wanted to focus specifically on female health. That led us to establishing FemTech Analytics in May of this year. We also participate in a number of nonprofit collaborations, such as Biogerontology Research Foundation, Longevity UK, Longevity International, and a number of others. So the group has been in existence since approximately 2015. And over the years, we have published a large number, apparently, of open access analytical reports. The topic was always longevity, defined as health span or living healthier for longer. And sometimes we would focus on certain aspects of it, such as biomarkers. But also, in addition to that, we did a number of original case studies, which enabled us to establish a number of collaborations, including with United Nations, WHO, Aging Research at King's, and a number of others. Again, reports are open access, so we welcome everyone to check them out. And since the inception of FemTech Analytics in May of this year, we have published a number of reports, the first one being the landscape overview of FemTech space. And we're very glad that we have a specific subsidiary that is devoted to such important subject as female health. And we will continue producing open access reports, as well as hosting free webinars on the topic. And we also have a number of open access interactive mind maps and IT platforms that correspond to our analytics. So I mentioned that we did a FemTech landscape overview, and today we spoke a lot about the changes that women undergo with aging. So one of the important topics from our perspective is longevity and human skin being the largest organ. So we wanted to present today the summary of our new open access report that is titled Advanced Cosmetics Ecosystem 2021. I know we don't have much time, so I will provide a brief overview. The report essentially analyzed the space. We profiled 400 companies, over 150 investors, as well as R&D centers. It is clear for us this is a very promising market. It features both private and public companies. And further in the report, you can also review the key trends that are successful in this space. In terms of what companies do, we, in addition to products, we also analyzed beauty devices, cosmeceuticals, natural cosmetics, and natural ingredient sectors. So what is advanced cosmetics, the way we define it? Well, traditionally, of course, traditional cosmetics is something that improves appearance in a short, in a short term. However, thankfully, we're seeing a new trend when cosmetics is actually merging with high technology. And this is when we start to focus not just on short-term aesthetic changes, but something that is long-term, and it includes something much more scientific, which would include cosmeceuticals, nutraceuticals, aesthetic medicine, physiotherapy, and apparatus cosmetology. Another important aspect here is personalization, because skin is the largest organ, and it's important to implement the individualized approach, as well as have preventive measures as well. So the good news is that the companies and investors profiled in our report, they are doing something that is actionable now. And I welcome everyone who is interested to review and perhaps try some of the products. I certainly will. And in terms of the top 10 advanced technologies that we've researched and decided to profile was stem cells, as they apply both to body and face, microbiome, body and face, oral hygiene, muscle recovery, dietary supplements, fat optimization and weight optimization, facial skin and hair, and apparatus cosmetology. In terms of the advanced cosmetics market framework, we actually classified it by types of products, by approach, be it preventive, personalized, curative, regenerative, or combination of all of the above. Also, we've grouped them by stage as well as by technology, be it conventional or AI or AR-driven, stem cells, bioelectronics, etc. And this diagram essentially, presents a compilation of all of the companies in the space, as well as the type of products, services, or therapies that they work on. And there's a corresponding interactive database that you could use as well. In terms of market size, it's clear that United States leads, occupying 59% of the market. Out of 160 billion market size, natural cosmetics lead. We have natural cosmetics as well as beauty devices that lead, cosmeceuticals, anti-aging, and ingredients as a service. One of the key trends that we've seen, and we believe it's very promising, it's microbiome, which is a collective of microbes that live inside, and on the human body. It has been research shown that traditional, synthetic chemical ingredients contained in cosmetics actually cause damage to the skin microbiome. So that needs to be addressed. And the approach that, incorporates microbiome, we believe is very promising, and there's lots of future in that. And the diagram here shows the, top 10 companies that actually implement such an approach. There's, of course, a connection between, advanced cosmetics and longevity. It's a health span, because we don't need to usually ask someone how old they are, because you can take a look at their skin and wrinkles could tell. So what we see, though, is that advanced cosmetology implements such approaches that improves overall health of a human being, be it prevention of certain skin diseases or improvement of self-esteem or other anti-aging effects. So we also think that in addition to biomarkers of aging, it's important to have other actionable biomarkers, such as, for instance, skin. In terms of skincare of aging, the key trends here is to combine pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, and foods, and each of them has the subsector, be it cosmeceuticals, nutracosmetics, and nutraceuticals. The cosmetics market is dominated by North America, followed by Western Europe, but also Asia-Pacific region shows lots of promise and is the fastest growing region. Brazil dominates the aesthetic procedures industry in South America, and the United Arab Emirates and South Africa drive the demand in the Middle East and Asia region. And in terms of most popular products, I guess non-surprising, anti-wrinkle products lead the way. In terms of the top advanced cosmetics companies, they're presented here, segmentized by skincare, personal care, hair care, and makeup. In terms of leading investors, we have the European Commission leading the way, followed by Techstars, SOSV, and a number of others. And I know we're short on time, so I will proceed with some conclusions here. So we are in 2021. So by 2023, we expect that the market size will be 22.3 billion. And we will see the wide usage of devices for skin scan, as well as vitamin D promoting sunscreen. By 2025, we would see, Asia and Oceania becoming the biggest consumers in the skincare products globally. Also, we will see, advanced versions of downloadable personalized skincare and makeup applications, as well as non-invasive wrinkle-frees. Then by 2030, we see a projected increase in market size. We will see alternatives to facelift being by utilizing certain laser procedures, as well as innovative topical solutions for hormonal acne. And by 2035, we will have, a lot more, such as, solutions for hair aging, a huge market segment, customized foundation shade, as well as a number of other advancements that are further mentioned in the report. Last but not least, I also wanted to draw everyone's attention to our other open access report, which covers the entire longevity industry and its key trends, which includes FemTech. Again, this is open access, accompanied by mind maps and dashboards. And this diagram kind of gives you a snapshot as who is doing what and where, and what are the key players and sectors. And this is an overview by sectors itself. And finally, speaking of FemTech, we will be publishing a book later this year, focused specifically on women longevity. And with that, I thank everyone for participating. I look forward to our Q&A session. And all of the analytics that I've been mentioning today can be found at www.femtech.health. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. And I would really highly recommend heading over to the site. The mind maps and all of the analytics there are so useful. So we're going to start our Q&A session now. So if you do have any questions, pop them in the chat. I've been too engrossed in everybody and have let all of our panelists go over time. So I'm going to shorten the Q&A session a little bit. But I'm going to start off with a question for Barbara, and the question is around AI. So the question is that you mentioned the potential to include AI in your virtual menopause clinic. How do you envisage this happening, and how far away are you from achieving that?
And so the integration of AI will be useful for our integrative health questionnaires, looking at symptoms and then tracking personal choices of women for whether they choose to use lifestyle interventions, treatments, or medicinal treatments, supplements, or a combination of all of those. And so we will track those journeys and track outcomes at each visit so that we have long-term data to see what's working for women. And then that helps craft the decision-making trees on how to guide providers based on the information that women have supplied to us. We are, it's a conversation in our company. We haven't implemented it yet, as we are still in our startup phase. And so we're not there yet for AI, but the platform, our software was built to incorporate the AI for the future.
Amazing. And Dr. Isabel, I wonder if you wanted to speak a little bit about how you've also brought in AI and how that works in your company.
Yeah, sure. We have two key areas where we focus our AI models on. The more obvious one is the early risk detection. We started off training our models with CDC data to mainly discover typical clusters or typical patterns of symptoms and biomarker combinations, but also lifestyle habits. I mean, if I should take a guess, I would take obese people over 45 and say, okay, let's try. But that's a very dumb estimate. So you can do this a little bit smarter, because until people really go here in Switzerland and Germany, it would be a pharmacy and get this long-term glucose measurement, it takes a little bit longer to take blood. So it helps to have very smart estimates. We also realized that we can detect, that's something we learned by surprise, that we can detect really well early patterns of people who have a mental health, a special behavior of mental health that indicates us a little bit in advance if especially depressive or burnout symptoms would follow afterwards. We tested that with Zurich Insurance 1.5 years ago. And then third thing is the second area where we focus is really on this personalized nutrition. It's called precision nutrition. It's a part of precision medicine, and it basically implies that each and every person has a very, very individual list and doses of ingredients that we digest well. So we don't know yet if it's intermittent by intermittent factors like the microbiome or our genes are really and how they are influencing. There are no studies yet that could lead to that deduction, but we can really see how people react differently and have different symptoms after what they eat. And that's how we tweak it then optimally, next to the health goal, next to the history of diseases a person might have.
So it's really kind of based on the individual, which is, I feel like that came up a lot. I guess one of the questions I personally have is around what role the individuals play in controlling their own health, or whether it's more the role of government to kind of implement those. And I think, Debbie, in your chat, you were talking about how often it's kind of under research and there's not a lot of medical training around prolapse. And I wonder if you think that it's on like the government to kind of implement more medical training on those kind of topics.
Interesting. I don't know if it's the government necessarily, but even, within gynecology, that's my thought as why are there certain things that we scan for? I'd be curious on Barbara's thoughts on this, but, like breast cancer, of course, you go for your mammogram, but the chances that you have breast cancer are probably much slimmer than the chances that you might have pelvic floor concern. Of course, one may be life-threatening, the other not, but I think there are some things that could be screened for, and it could start with the consumer herself. Why is it that the consumer wouldn't necessarily go in and ask for pelvic floor review and ask for that kind of diagnosis or screening? I do know, and maybe this is what you were referring to, what I mentioned is that I believe in France that when a woman leaves a hospital or a center after giving birth, she is immediately put in touch with a pelvic floor support person. Whether it's a trained nurse, I don't actually know, but it is someone who works in pelvic floor support, and she's automatically from day one given that kind of support, which is not done in a lot of other countries. And so that could be a place to start.
And Barbara, I wonder if you have anything on that, because I feel like
I would like to add a comment with regards to pelvic floor evaluation, if I may. And so here in the US, as part of a standard OBGYN residency, you get extensive training with regards to evaluation of the pelvic floor that's done usually at a well woman visit. But I think so if you're seeing a gynecologist or an OBGYN for evaluation, you're going to get that information. But I think there's a lack and a discrepancy in the medical education and the experience with internal medicine, family practitioners. They get a very short window of a gynecology rotation here in the US. And I don't think that the training is robust enough for them to really recognize the subtleties of pelvic floor dysfunction until they're really quite dramatic that the patient is bringing it up. In addition, I do love the idea, we all know that the damage is done usually with the first vaginal birth of a child. The literature is pretty clear on a lot of those things with regards to pelvic floor. And to think that we could explode prevention of pelvic floor dysfunction by incorporating the use of pelvic floor physical therapists. So I don't know anything about the program in France, but that's brilliant. And we should all be vying for having those services after a vaginal delivery, because I think that education is really important.
Yeah, I think it's key, and just like an individual standpoint as well. I think Hila kind of mentioned it in her presentation that a lot of women just aren't aware of these things, or even who to go to or how to describe or talk about them. So yeah, I think that's really, really key. I think there's a question from the audience. Hien Nguyen, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. You asked whether if you can go through audio. I think if you'd like to speak and ask your question. Okay, I will come back to you. Yeah, we've got a question for Kate as well in the chat around why is advanced cosmetics a trend in 2021?
Well, we think that it's not just 2021. I think the momentum has been building up. And I realized that, our panelists today talked about very important implications to human health that also come with aging. Skin, if we take the main focus of our report, is the largest organ. It also plays an important role in our self-esteem. And the good news is we see a good shift from the artificial plastic surgery, artificial approach that has short and long-term effect to something that is connected to high tech and has long-term effects, in terms of women's health and men's health as well, because it could be of interest indeed for both genders. It improves your well-being and self-esteem. So it is wonderful to see how there are lots of advancements in this space, and they don't have to cost a fortune. And I think that's going to be a big improvement to everyone's life. Well, as a woman, I would definitely agree with that.
Definitely, yeah. I think it's so exciting to kind of see the advancements that are coming out in the space and the innovations. Another question I personally have is around like what role we think stigma plays in this kind of lack of access of knowledge or uptake in health services. So Hila, I guess there's not a lot that's been researched on menstrual blood before, and maybe that's one of the barriers. But do you think that's to do around stigma and shame, why menstrual blood hasn't been researched before?
Totally. Like this is it's unbelievable, the ignorance and the lack of knowledge. Me as an engineer in this space, and I need to develop a vaginal device, I have so many parameters that are missing, basic parameters like shape, forces, sizes. It was never only recently there is starting to be statistical information about vaginal sizes, vaginal length, vaginal forces. So it's quite unbelievable. I can tell you from my own experience in this field of fem health or female health, this is my second company in this field, and I've been experiencing sorry for the lack of a better word, but total ignorance. People just do not want to hear, they do not want to talk. And I'm really, really happy with all of the changes that FemTech is now doing, and hopefully things will change, because when you look at the money in this field, it's not enough. We have so much research to do. Even I'm sorry, I'm going back to menses because this is the closest to my heart. Like researching changes from one to one, day to day. Is it the same? Like there is so much you need to study that we don't know. So we have a lot to do in this space. So
I agree. There's such a lack of research, and I think Rachel touched on that on her talk as well, and just about the need for the right language, but also for more research. And I guess a question for you, Barbara, is like, how do you think that kind of lack of vocabulary or like shame and stigma around women's health impacts the clients or the users of your app?
I think that a lack of a comfort with vocabulary really is a negative for us as women. We need to come together and say, it's okay to call a vagina. It's okay to call a vulva. It's okay to mention the word clitoris. It's okay to talk about orgasm. It's okay to say that sex hurts. And when I listen to Rachel's talk, I can tell you, ads that we put on Facebook or social media get rejected when we mention that vaginal pain, or we use proper medical terminology, and they get rejected, and they say that they're too sexual or too intimate. And so this idea of kind of shutting down the language that we use is perpetuating the negative aspect for all of us as women. And I think that we need to go and say to Facebook and social media and all these other programs and say, hey, you know what? We're using proper medical terminology. This is how we need to speak to one another. This is educating and empowering women to make choices and go up against those social media determinants and change our narrative and change the conversation and take a stand. And so, you know, if we all kind of come together and use a common language, and that language is the basis for the future, then we can really make a change in that aspect for women, where women are then comfortable to go to their doctor or their provider, or even talking to their significant other and saying, this is a problem for me, and coming for solutions to get help in all of the great technology that was presented today. It's having that conversation and being comfortable.
I completely agree. And this kind of social media running, it comes up so much in any conversation I have around FemTech. And I've recently published a video on FemTech Live that was just kind of doing a comparison between women's health and men's health. And there's just such a gender bias there. So yeah, I really do think there's a need to open up that conversation. Debbie, I wonder how that also impacts kind of, yeah, your users and your clients.
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry. What impacts our clients?
So the kind of knowledge around the body, how does that kind of impact your?
Yeah, I mean, I referenced it maybe briefly in my talk, but as I mentioned, prolapse is not even a word familiar to many women. I think the knowledge, and even I think Rachel mentioned, you don't even know what your body parts are doing. And sometimes, look, incontinence can be a symptom of a lot of different things. It could be prolapse, it could be stress urinary incontinence, it could be overactive bladder. You know, you really don't know exactly what's going on. I think there's not enough knowledge for the consumer herself and access to good good medical education for the consumer without all this, kind of crazy stuff that's out there. So that's part of what we're working towards, is looking at different options for providing really quality education for women in this area, so they know what can happen in their body, what to ask about, and what they can do about it.
Yeah, I think I hear education, awareness, and conversation from all of you, and just kind of promoting that a lot more. And I think that is really key. We've run over time, so I'm going to cut the Q&A there. But if you do have questions for our panelists, pop them in the chat, or if you scroll through the chat, they're kind of LinkedIn profiles and stuff are there, so you can reach out to them as well. For now, we're going to hand over to our second panel, which is all about the potential of FemTech in advancing women's lifespan. I'm really excited for this. So I'm going to hand over to Ksenia to start.
Hi. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to be here. I'm very humbled to be among such a amazing crowd. It's really tremendous what everyone is doing here, and I will, coming from a corporate side, I will try to a little bit say about our humble efforts in advancing FemTech in Switzerland. As Isabel, I come from Switzerland. This is where I'm based, and difference is that she comes from a German-speaking part, and I come from a French-speaking part. We're a small country, but we're very diverse. I'm a strategic innovation expert at Groupe Mutuel. And I'm going to briefly speak about myself. I'm going to speak about Tech Forever, which you might have heard about. Very happy to be here with Carbomed and Gals Bio, who are in Tech Forever program. I'm going to briefly speak about our other initiatives in FemTech and women's health, and just kind of a couple of concluding remarks. So who am I? My name is Ksenia Tugay. I was born in Moscow, Russia, and I grew up between Moscow and Geneva, Switzerland. And in 2015, I have completed a PhD in the University of Lausanne here in Switzerland. The subject of my PhD was diabetes, type 2 diabetes, aging, and genetics. I was basically looking what happens with us during aging on the level of our genes that makes us more susceptible to develop type 2 diabetes and decrease insulin secretion. And today I work at Groupe Mutuel, and I'm basically an innovation scout and facilitator, and I also manage some of our innovation programs. My job is to identify trends, technologies, and companies that can inspire us to develop new products and services, or that we can collaborate with, buy their services, and do great stuff together. And who is Groupe Mutuel? Groupe Mutuel is the leading Swiss health insurance. So some of you might not know that. In Switzerland, health insurance is mandatory, and it can be purchased only from a private provider. And Groupe Mutuel is one of these providers. The population of Switzerland is roughly 8 million people. We're not a very big country, and we have about 1.5, 1.2 individual policyholders that hold our health insurance policies. And we also have roughly 25,000 corporate clients. And here we are more on sick leave insurance and accident insurance. And then we have other products that we offer, but health insurance is really our health insurance and related services is really our bread and butter. And I would like to tell you about something that we have launched in March this year together with EPFL Innovation Park. And I would like to tell you a little bit who EPFL Innovation Park is if you don't know. So EPFL is the École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne, and it's one of the leading schools in the world in life sciences and technology, with very strong innovation park, which became home to quite a few Swiss unicorns, and with a tremendous track record in coaching entrepreneurs, startups, people who want to create their own company, especially in everything tech related, engineering related, life science related. So when we decided to launch first FemTech hub in continental Europe. I mean, look no longer. We decided to do it with EPFL Innovation Park. And in March this year, we have launched Tech Forever, which is a 9-month equity-free acceleration program for early and growth stage FemTech ventures. And I'm really proud to say that in our first cohort, we really cover all the universe of FemTech products, from consumables to medical devices. We even have biotech, and the companies come from all over the world. Of course, we have quite a few of European companies, but it's really international and it's really cool. We have two tracks, so early stage and growth stage companies, and they have different level of support. So they have different type of personalized coaching from top industry experts, from Merck, Ferring, other women as well. And we also organize different virtual events dedicated to the discoveries of different markets, be that UK, Japan, US. And another thing that I love about Tech Forever is that there is this community aspect. So it's not only for the selected startups. A lot of the events, including this expert talks and events dedicated to discovery of different markets, are open to everyone. So the startups which have applied to the program but were not selected, for you, for people interested in FemTech, and this is really like one of the best things about this program. And in terms of our initiatives and Groupe Mutuel, it's great to do something, with an external partner, but it's really important to do also something around FemTech in our own company. And we have launched Tech Forever Club. And here, basically, every month, we host a webinar, which is open to all the employees of Groupe Mutuel, to interns, to shop floor, to maintenance people, not only to executive and senior management, because this is not how the change happens. And we bring Tech Forever startups to present their solution. And we unfortunately are limited by French and German speaking, because if we go below middle management, people might not necessarily speak English, but they still want to learn about FemTech. And what I love about this Tech Forever Club is that we have 1 or 2 startup presentations, and then we ask startups to disconnect, and we stay online and we discuss between each other, what do we think about this subject, what is the problem, what is the solution, what can we create for our clients, and what can we change internally in our company regarding this subject. And the topics that we were discussing in 2021 were pregnancy, menopause, urinary incontinence prevention, and fertility. And I would also like to tell you about something which is, much less high tech, but I think is really important. And as far as I'm aware, we are the only health insurance in Switzerland offering this service to our corporate clients. So if you have different information, please get in touch. I would be really interested to know if there are other health insurances doing the same thing. This is something that we have been doing for the past 7 years already. And another important point is that in Switzerland, the employer by law must provide pregnant employees with suitable working conditions and ensure, that they're not going to have any problems with their pregnancy. And of course, here we're in a context of healthy pregnancy and not at-risk pregnancy. We basically provide our clients with dedicated midwives that will come and will speak to your female employee, which is pregnant, and which will ensure that her workplace is adapted, to her new condition, and that her, physical and psychological stress is not overwhelming, and that she can, continue working and enjoy her pregnancy, and everyone will be happy. And we have around 600 cases per year where we provide this service. I speak very fast, but
It's
that's okay. But that's okay, because we're a little bit behind. This is all that I wanted to tell you, actually, folks. But maybe I would like to conclude by saying that, we can only advance female health, women's health together if we really all work together. So we really must unite payers, providers, startups, academia, ecosystem partners, investors. Only by joint effort we can advance female health, and we can close the gaps that exist. And I do believe that we will see a lot of progress in this field in the next 5 to 10 years to come. And I'm very proud to humbly contributing to this change and advancing women's health together with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And yeah, really interesting to see what you're doing in terms of corporate stuff. I want to come back onto that later because you're kind of dismantling shame and stigma in the workplace, which is super interesting. So I'm going to pass over to Lisa now for your presentation.
Hi everyone, I'm quickly also sharing my screen. So thank you also for the invitation. My name is Lisa and I'm CMO of Carbomate Medical Solutions, which is the producer of Brevilo, which is a cycle tracker. And it's also great that we are part of the Tech Forever cohort. So thank you, Xenia, for your presentation as well. And today I really want to start with some facts about female health. Unfortunately, okay, now it works. So there is a phrase which catches me pretty well, because women experience disease differently than men, from their symptoms to the way they respond to medication and so on, which is from Dr. Andrea Klemes, and brings us to a lot of problems. Because a lot of medications and also other studies or products are not based on studies where women were taken into account. Actually, it's really worse, because there were also studies without women till 1994, so it's not a long time ago. And this all because the female body differs from the men. And everyone was afraid that the studies won't or will change because of the menstrual cycle. And that brings us to the problem that most of the products are made also for the average, actually it's even worse, white man, it's not with diverse backgrounds. And brings us also to the problem that 48 million couples are involuntarily childless nowadays. And I also have here some alarming gaps who follow because of the gaps in the research and also in the knowledge. So for example, there is a study who shows that less than a third knows about reproductive hormones. Then there is 70% of women don't track or log any menstrual flow or menstrual symptoms. 55% don't know when the next period will come. So I think on this panel, or also in this cohort here, most people will know or will even have any cycle tracking app. But to see that 55% don't know is really shocking for me. Actually, also that 48% did not know what ovulation is, which is pretty, I would say, important if you want to get pregnant. And also, they don't know how long ovulation is. So the common knowledge or understanding is that you can get pregnant all the time, for example. And also there's one thing which is really shocking, is that 9 in 10 women don't even know that heart disease is the leading cause in death of women. So we can see that there are a lot of things we need to catch up in knowledge, in education, and so on. And the reason for that is actually what I said before. It's because we have a lack of available data for women because of the studies. And now I want to bring you one solution. I know it's not the solution for everything, but it's one of them. And this is our Brevilo device, because it's a breath analyzer, which is a cycle tracker for women. So the woman really breathes 1 minute per day into the device. And then we sample a lot of data in the woman's breath to get to know her better. And then also display the fertility status in our Brevilo app. And with our app, we really had to see from the beginning on that there is a lack of education. So we were bringing our app forward to more information and education. And we are based on 3 stages here. So for example, we give individual recommendations per your cycle day, because it's important, it's important to know when you do sport training plans, when is the best time to do endurance training, or when is the best time to go on heavy weights. So most of the people don't know that. It's even worse because if you, for example, are suffering from PMS syndrome, you could easily change it with your nutrition and with sports. So this is not normal, but most of the people don't know that. And if you see the figures that the most women don't take into account the menstrual flow or doing any track of it, it's even worse. So we figured out that these are the three main areas we want to educate the people. So we're doing it in sports, nutrition, also in lifestyle, because it's also if you are productive or you have any meetings which are more important, you should always do this in the first cycle phase and not in the second one, because there you're not feeling pretty well, or you sometimes suffer from headache, stomachache, or any other things. So you could easily bring this into your daily business. And we do everything. What we do is always based on the Pre-Vilo tracker. And there I want to show you some scientific background, because our co-founder, Professor Dr. Ludwig Wilk, he found out that the menstrual cycle is in correlation with the breath of a woman, so with the CO2 partial pressure actually. And this means that high fertility is a low CO2 partial pressure. You can see some publications of him. If you want to, I can also show you them or send it through. And he is also not in the operating field in our company, but he brings on this really important topic, and he's also an Austrian. And after his research and his studies, we had to rethink this breath analyzer pretty new. So we needed 5 years of R&D work, but we are really now proud that we have a gold standard performance device, which is 20 times cheaper. And on one slide, again, the advantages of Pre-Vilo, it's the simple usage, because you only need to do it 60 seconds per day. It's an early indicator, because you know that your fertile days are coming before ovulation, because we can see the drop before. And we are also really sustainable, because we want to do everything without any consumables. So it's a one-time off device. But this is not where we stop. We are really having an open ear for everyone. We are trying to do a lot in education. As I said before, we are doing this all over our channels. We're doing it on Instagram, via a help desk, via social media, and so on. And so a lot of people are reaching out to us having not our device, but want to know more about the cycle, or want to get to know more about training plans, or want to have a coaching. So we are also here for that. We are also proud that we brought up some good thoughts also on our scientifically blogs on our website. So everything is scientifically proven we are doing, because the thing is that on the websites or in the internet, you can find a lot of things which are not, let's say, scientifically proved, but most people are Googling everything. So we wanted to bring a content up with a lot of expert knowledge. We are talking to medicines, to experts, to coaches, to hormonal coaches, and we are just publishing anything which has a scientifically background, which is really important. And we bring this up for free, but of course we are always happy if the people are reaching out to us and telling us that we are doing great work, and it's pretty awesome that we're giving this as a free resource. And for today, to come to an end, I also have some key takeaways for everyone on this call. First of all, I would really advise everyone to do cycle tracking, to learn more about their whole body, about their cycle, and to know what to do with their body in the right cycle phase. And it's pretty important also to ask the right questions. Always ask for medical care if you're in hospital, or if you're just going to a doctor. It's not easy, I know, but you should really ask for medical care according to a woman's body, because most of the studies are made with men, and sometimes it's wrong. What will also help for bringing up an easier diagnosis is to try to log your symptoms, do it in an app you like to do it. Then you can also keep track of all your cycle patterns. And on the very last end, I really want to force everyone to use products made for females and out of the FemTech space, because if everyone does this, that will also help everyone in the space, because then we can hopefully close a little bit the gender data gap, because it will help us to bring more technology on the market, and we'll have to get more investment and so on. So it's pretty important. I have also 3 recommendations for you if you are new to the FemTech space or even on the gender data gap. I have 2 books I really like to recommend. The first one is Invisible Woman, because it gives you a really good overview of everything, what happens out there and which is male dominated. And the next one is Sex Matters, because it's much more into detail when it comes to medicine. And I think the author is really great. I also follow her on diverse channels, and she always brings up new gaps in medicine. And I think this is important to your own health. And the FemTech Focus Group is also really interesting. There's a podcast if you are more on the audio side. It's hosted by Brittany Barretter, and she always makes interviews with a lot of female health advocates and really interesting people. So I would recommend to hear her thoughts and also those from the founders. So I'm on the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And you have just recommended 2 of my favorite books. I really love
that's great.
It's great. So I'd get everyone to read it. Thank you so much. And next is Petra. I'm going to let you take over.
Hi everyone, my name is Petra. I'm a product designer. Let me just share my screen with you all. Okay, so as I said, I'm a product designer. I'm going to talk about myself in a bit, but what I am bringing today is digital product design, because there are so many amazing people here creating amazing products. And I just wanted to kind of give you my expertise and help you build even better products when it comes to the digital space, though I think that these can translate into offline products as well. So let me just go here. Yeah, so I'm Petra. I'm a digital product designer at VMLY&R by day, but I'm also a freelance digital product designer every other day of my working week, which is really important. I don't work on the weekends. And yeah, as I said, I'm hoping to support this amazing group of people when you're developing something, because there is an art to it. And people don't realize this quite often, that the user experience of the product is so important. And we need to make sure that people can trust these products. So when I say product design, I just want to make sure that you know what that means. So what is actually product design? Product design to me consists of 3 things, not just 2, because normally we talk about user experience, the user interface. But for me, it also consists of business, because there is one side of the product is the user experience, right? So creating a digital experience by understanding the user's needs, behaviors, values, abilities and limitations, and we just create a really good experience for them within the product, so that they are satisfied, that they keep coming back, they have a good experience that they can trust. That's the most important thing. The other pillar is user interface, where we just look at really the visuals, and even more so, what's even more important is the accessibility and, again, user friendliness. But then the last thing, which I think is, again, really important, is the business's goals and needs, because what would the product be if it's not, profitable, if it's not doing well, it's not going to stay on the market for long. So all 3 need to be combined. Why this is important and why this is hitting quite home, quite to my heart, is really close to my heart, is because we have a really male-centric healthcare. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but for example, there are different symptoms in females and males when it's leading up to a heart attack. So this was something mind-blowing to me, but unfortunately it's something that happened in our family, and I was really shocked that that's a thing. But unfortunately, all the education and all the this, or to help ourselves, we have to do it ourselves, right? So how we can do it is, for example, through product. I want to kind of just emphasize that obviously there are things that are really changed by our hormones. So it obviously makes sense to not really blame, but kind of think about the hormone side of things as well. But it's not always the case, and it's quite kind of frustrating that a lot of things are blamed on just us being females, which is definitely not true. So how do we create a product that people can trust? First things first would be 100% research. I think a lot of people think that they can just go ahead and create a product, which, in a lot of cases is true. However, if we just look at the Apple Store, for example, I'll look at it for you. If you look for female health, the most things you get is period trackers, which, don't get me wrong, super important. However, I do think that this space needs innovation, because we keep creating the same product, we keep innovating, which is amazing. But I do think that we just need more diversity. When it comes to product, it's really, really important that we look at and listen to what users really want. We are not creating a product for ourselves, we're creating a product for them. So we need to make sure that the user experience is there. We can speak to people, we can use online tools if we have the money, or you can do interviews. Or my favorite, which a lot of people don't think of, is look at reviews. You can just look up, for example, in the Apple Store, you can look up an app, a product, whatever it is, and you will see so many pain points that you could improve for people. There is always room for improvement. So the second thing would be to emphasize. We have to understand the user, understand their problems, understand their limitations. And again, we are creating for them, not for ourselves. One thing I would say here, and I think it's a bit controversial, is that I do think that it makes sense to hire a team of females, because again, females design for females, we can emphasize better, we understand the issues, we've been through them when it comes to, let's say, menstruation or any other female health issues. We understand better. Don't get me wrong, any professional can design really well, and that's their job, and I'm sure amazing at it, but emphasizing just brings this side as well. So as an example, I would take the app Clue, which is a menstrual tracking app. And the previous example of the app reviews I showed you, they were about this app. So I took the pain points and I kind of thought about it, looked at what people are saying, and I tried to redesign the app. These are just small things that would actually really help the user, and they would solve so many problems. So I'm sure that there is obviously a lot of data behind it, but this would be one way of doing it. The third thing would be to actually create the product. One thing I would say here is that I think a lot of people think that what you're creating has to be the next Apple, the next big thing, but it's just not true. We are solving someone's problem, and that's really important, whether it's a small problem or a big problem. As long as we're solving something, people will listen. So as an example, I would use the Lowdown Pill Companion. The Lowdown is the world's first contraception review platform. And last year, when I was part of the Lowdown, we created an app. It was the time of lockdown. There was a lack of GP appointments. It was really difficult to get contraception, not to mention the previous point of being misdiagnosed, everything being blamed on hormones, being given the wrong contraception. So what we created here with the Lowdown was a solution that would help you diagnose what your issues are, which may be caused by a contraception, by your pill, and which pill to switch to actually solve your problems. We also created a database of education, of chat, of even online appointment with GPs. There are reviews as well. So it was a great solution. I do believe that the Lowdown moved everything to the website now, if you want to have a look, but it's absolutely amazing what they did. And last but not least would be to do it all over again. So a product is never finished. So once you created everything, you have to go back, you have to research again, you have to test again, and you will be redoing the thing over and over again. But that's the beauty of it. It can only get better. And last thing I wanted to say, as I mentioned before, as long as we're creating a product that will solve someone's problem, people will use it. Doesn't really matter if it's the most beautiful app. It doesn't really matter if you only have 500 reviews on the App Store. People will use it. You're going to make their lives better. So I would just really suggest, put it out there, a minimum viable product. You can go back, test it, redo it, make it better. but people will be really grateful when you solve their problem. And I'm going to emphasize one last time, it doesn't have to be the next Apple, it doesn't have to be the next revolutionary thing, because I'm sure if you find someone's pain point and solve it, they will be super, super grateful. And I think this is how we can support the whole space and industry. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Petra, and everybody's really grateful for those final words about like your product always being important. And I think what you were saying about user-centered design is really key as well. So we're going to hand over to our next speaker now, who is David.
Ladies, it's a great pleasure to join you. Thank you for having me. I will keep this short and to the point. I'm actually flying tomorrow to Dubai, where I have a series of events at the Dubai Expo, and there is a whole pavilion of the Dubai Expo dedicated to FemTech, and so it's called the Women Pavilion, and I will present there as well. My background as an anthropologist led me to travel literally across the world over. And in each culture of the world, I was researching the adepts, sort of the Olympians, the spiritual champions that each culture and tradition had to offer. All the way from Africa, South America, Central America, Siberia, Asia, Southeast Asia, everywhere. And one of the core elements common to each and every culture is, of course, the cult of the feminine, the cult of the mother. And connected with it, a whole wisdom of female well-being, specifically in the dimension of sexuality and sexual pleasure or orgasm. And this one became sort of a big part of my research, how this wisdom and knowledge survived in this sort of wisdom holder tradition, which in many cases are women, in other cases are actually men, strangely enough. And I became sort of a collector of what I found to be the most interesting tools, knowledge, practices that could enhance female wisdom, female health, female well-being, sexual health, sexual pleasure, and and the whole knowledge and experience of the different degrees and levels of orgasms. Now, this is before FemTech was even invented as a name. Then in the recent years, with the emerging of FemTech, I realized that what I research, and of course I didn't research only that, but specifically now in this thematic, in this topic, is actually a fundamental core element in FemTech. And so we went a long way to how do we translate this ancient knowledge. We double check it with modern standards. We see what's redundant, we see what's not real, what's working, what's not working, and then we take the best and repackage it then and offer it in a modern setting, very secular setting, very sort of scientific setting and framing. And I've been very passionate about this, especially, sort of my wife is really the person that then spearhead this. You will ask, why is she not talking to us? My wife is Russian, and English, it's still on the rise in her sphere of knowledge. So I'm a bit more confident with language, so I'll bring this message, but eventually she's the one that then leads group of women. I come in sort of to maybe check some things or give a bit more of a cultural, anthropological, philosophical, psychological framing, but then the training itself and the technologies, she's really the one that then presented. So this repackaging that we did is connected to what I call the 10 sources of energy, of which sexuality and the body-mind connection, the psychosoma, so that continuum that is the psyche and the soma interfaced one with the other, came up to be a set of very practical exercises. So there is a sort of an educational part, which I think is fundamental to be given to women. And this education, of course, will be my auspice that one day will be part of school education, together with sort of, well-integrated psychosomatic sort of approaches, and very, very concrete tools. Now, these tools that existed from time immemorial, and to a certain extent, we can call them, they are part of the sex toys, but they are actually not sex toys, they're actually practice tools to strengthen and work with everything that goes from pelvic floor to the three sort of main sphincters and orifice, all the way to the working with the uterus, and re-establishing connection with the tubes and the ovaries, and establishing connection with the nerves of the breast, how all this is then wired and controlled by the brain, and how all this is then controlled and at the same time influence the psychological, psycho-emotional part. Well, that's sort of what I'm very passionate to talk about, because the results are incredible. I mean, we solve real problems. There is a large percentage of women that cannot orgasm easily or at times at all, that have painful sex, painful menstruations, organ prolapse. I saw that was in one of the topics of the conversation. Okay, all different sort of myomas or all different sort of problematic, typically, of women, that can be resolved with these exercises, with these practices, and with this tech, with these tools that are used together with the practice. All right, there is a part of the exercise that is mental. There is a part that has to do with breathing. There is a part that has to do with the body. Okay, and there is a part that has to do with the tech. But then you need to combine the tech with all the other elements. And then all these other elements, they need to be framed in the context of the 10 energy sources. The 10 energy sources, they go from the sort of epigenetic information that is our surrounding, all the way to the light, all the way to the air, to the water, to the electromagnetic waves, to the food, and so forth and so on. So coming from the very big picture to the very precise, and then from the very small detail, laser focus precise on sexuality or orgasm, to then expand to the larger picture, here we have an incredible and an incredibly effective tools that, you don't need to wait years. It's like it's sort of ready to use, okay? And of course, this one is like, it's going to be implemented in different apps. We want to bring it into telemedicine, bring it to sort of nurses and doctors, gynecologists, and really open these wide. That is it.
David, oh, perfect. I was just about to ask you to wrap up. Thank you so much, and great that we got you on camera. I'm going to move on swiftly to Mark, because I know we're delayed on time a little bit. So over to you, Mark.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Musgar. I'm one of the co-founders of March Health. We are focused on a woman's cycle assistant. This product is a labor of love for me personally as one of the co-founders. I built it in the first place for my wife. I've been married for 10 years and I've seen my wife every month going through excruciating menstrual pain. And 2 years ago, a very personal incident happened to us that really moved me to basically pivot from what I was doing at that time to start this business with my co-founders. What we have right now is a period pain solution for both physical and emotional and psychological. So Marsh is an AI-powered women's cycle assistant. As we speak right now, there are more than 2 billion women menstruating, billion people menstruating this month in the world. And from them, 75% of menstruating people, they experience some sort of emotional and psychological discomfort, also including physical discomfort. On the other hand, endometriosis cases are rising. And as we speak right now, there are more than 200 million cases in the world. Just the economic burden of menstruation and period discomfort for American women is more than $2 billion. And this number is exactly 54 times more for businesses that are not solving this and are not helping and supporting women in a good way. So we are here to do something about that. Based on the research and the data that we have based on those focus groups and research, both emotional, psychological part and also physical and clinical parts are equally important for menstruating people. We see symptoms like mood swings, like food cravings, like temporary depressions are bothering people even more than physical pain in most cases. So we wanted to have an inclusive solution. So what we have is a wearable that is a 1 inch by 1 inch, the thickness is 1/2 inch, and it gets connected to a pad. It's a non-invasive solution. Let's say I am on my period, I put it under the belly or on my back, and it does its magic. It mutes the menstrual pain using micropulses. We use a technology named IFC, which helps with period pain. And we tailor the solution to completely focus on the period pain and pelvic part. So this is one part of the solution. The other part that we have is an app, is a standalone app, which is for emotional psychological part. It has 2 core features, one for emotional discomfort and one for psychological one. For emotional one, let's say Sarah, we call it partner support. Let's say Sarah is on her period and David wants to support her. We tell David, these are the things that you need to know about Sarah and Sarah's menstruation. She was in pain today, the whole day. She had tons of cramps. These are the things that she likes you to do. These are the things that you should not do. And we educate David about Sarah's menstruation and about menstruation in general. So he can be a better supportive for his partner. On the other hand, when we ask people in our focus group that, are you happy with the level of the support that you're getting from your partners? Even the ones that they say yes, they expect more support and understanding from their partner. So this is one of the features. The second feature is about the psychological part. WebMDs from 2 different sources, from sensors on the app, from sensors on the wearable, and also the data, the daily check-ins that we are getting from the user in the app. So we give them smart and personalized recommendations to help them have easier and better days. So even though I'm not having period, but I know firsthand from my wife that period sucks, and everyone knows that. So we are helping with the quality of the day that the menstruating person has with the smart recommendations. For example, we tell them about what they can do about mood swings, what they can do about different symptoms that they are experiencing. Also, on the other hand, we have telemedicine. So they can connect our app to their doctors, to their gynecologist and OBGYN, and let that doctor to know about their body's behavior and log during menstruation. This particularly will help with diagnostic part. For example, in average, endometriosis diagnosis takes 8 years. In some countries, even more. So we are trying to reduce that time by letting the OBGYN gynecologist have access to body's behavior during menstruation. On the other hand, we are helping that individual, the user, to have a better insight to their health and their underlying health conditions. To validate the technology on one hand and also validate the market, we have done numerous studies and focus groups and medical trials. And so we've sent a wearable and app to 105 people of our focus group and asked them to use the wearable during their period and interviewed each one of them for 2.5 hours. And we got 96% success rate. What the success means here, it's anything in the pain section is self-reporting. So in a scale of 10, their pain level was 8, 9, 10 before using the wearable. And after that, it was 0, 1, 2, 3, because every body's behavior is different. So right now, we are trying to go to the next level. We are partnering up with different universities, different institutions, and organizations to be part of their wellness package for their female employees. The one question that might come to your mind is that, why did we name the business March? March, on one hand, as a noun, is Women's International Month and is a month itself. On the other hand, is the start of the nature cycle, and also is the start of spring, which is for fertility and being fertile. On the other hand, as a verb, it brings action. So let's march for women's health, let's march for women's equality, and let's march for women's right. So I want to thank you, all of you, for listening to this part, and feel free to ask any questions that you have about period pain, about what we are doing, and about the next things that we have in our innovation pipeline. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark. People in the chat are already talking about the next generation for your startup, and lots of people want this idea for perimenopause and menopause as well. So thank you so much. That was really inspiring and super interesting. Next, I'm going to hand over to
Hi, everyone. I just want to begin by thanking FemTech Analytics for hosting this event. It's been such an engaging event so far, and I'm really honored to be part of this lineup of speakers. I am Susan Stover. I am the Marketing and Brand Manager at High Ivy Health. We're a FemTech startup based in Ontario, Canada, and we're developing an innovative pelvic health rehabilitation system for the 1 in 3 women who will experience pelvic health issues in their lifetime. I'm also the co-host of the monthly FemTech Focus Book Club, where we dive into books and the topics that they cover, including FemTech, technology, and women's health and wellness. I have a varied background working as a marketing and brand specialist and content creator. I've worked across various sectors, including biometrics, mobile identity, FinTech, and healthcare. And what drew me first to the FemTech industry was, for lack of a better word, what I was seeing was a movement of innovators, entrepreneurs, scientists, and investors looking to solve problems that affect women either directly, disproportionately, or solely. And like Rachel touched on earlier, some of the questions that we tend to get, or the persistent questions that I've heard about the FemTech industry, are, similar to, why does it need to exist? Why not just call it healthcare? Why not women's health? Does it really need to be a category of its own? And there are more than a few completely valid and compelling answers that I've seen to this question, but the best answer that I've encountered so far is that FemTech was created because we have failed women. We have failed to provide healthcare products and solutions that adequately and effectively help women and girls live longer, healthier lives. From hysteria to the psychosomatic, women have been told that their legitimate health concerns are all in their heads throughout history. In addition to sexism, the intersection of racism, socioeconomic status, transphobia, fat phobia, and ageism are all driving factors in how women are misdiagnosed, ignored, or outright profiled when suffering real health issues. And patriarchy and heteronormativity have deemed women's bodies of only being of value when they're able to reproduce, and has dismissed suffering of women as just part of being a woman. We have lacked the research, funding, and investment of time, money, and consideration for women's health solution, where we've seen that although women are actually living longer, they're sicker and experiencing a decreased quality of life. The list goes on, and there are a plethora of femtech companies working on innovative solutions to ultimately contribute to women's health and wellness. While there's a lot of work being done in the femtech industries on the solutions and products to help women, for the purposes of my talk today, I want to focus on another way that we failed women, which is the way that we've marketed that to them throughout every step of their lives. And I'm not just talking about a bygone era of blatant sexist examples, but the contemporary ways and more subtle ways that we may not always be conscious about, because it's so ingrained in the way that traditional marketing has formed our relationship with brands. And although we've made huge strides in the right direction, I think it's imperative to examine ways that we failed women in marketing. Some of these include that we've seen women as vacant and need told what to do. So this would be a strategy, for example, that you have like this great product or solution, and that's what your marketing is centered on. It's telling women and explaining women how and why it's the best thing for them, and to explain to them what they don't know about themselves. We've seen the use of pseudoscientific language that has been employed to establish a predominantly male authority, patronizing language that has dismissed and distanced women. We've seen the use of vague language around women's health, especially when it comes to menstruation, menopause, and sex. And we've touched on this, a few different speakers talking about how this has been reinforced through the internet and guidelines with ad blocking or shadow banning. Women have consistently been told that they are too much or not enough. I do not have enough time in the 10 minutes that we've been allotted today to actually unpack this one, but in a nutshell, women are under tremendous pressure that is being reinforced by brand advertising and marketing, especially when it comes to their health. And sexist and sneaky tropes like being the perfect mom or the good girl are telling women that they have to do everything, never complain, and absolutely never be angry. We see the use of tokenism of people of color and the LGBTQ plus bodies and narratives that to make a brand seem inclusive, but they're using them just as a symbol and not as a wholly realized person. And finally, we're seeing that women are told to change themselves and their behavior, reinforcing or implying to women that it's their fault that they're suffering. It's because they're not doing X, Y, and Z. And ultimately, we failed women in marketing because we failed to meet them where they are, and instead told them what they should want. And again, I'm seeing huge strides in the femtech industry, and a lot of companies are employing great practices, but this is something that we need to think about when we are addressing women, because they are starting to notice, and this means that we're losing women's trust. Like I mentioned, I do co-host a book club, so I'd be remiss if I didn't include a book recommendation here. Brandsplaining: Why Marketing is Still Sexist and How to Fix It, in my opinion, is a must read for anyone marketing to women. So we have all of this amazing work that the femtech industry is doing, and it's not going to be effective without the trusted women we serve. So a key way to earning their trust is meeting women where they are. So where are they? Women are not a homogeneous group. It's imperative that when looking at the problem that you and your company is looking to solve, that you try to identify who you're trying to speak to, and then dig deeper into who they are, going in without assumptions and going beyond basic demographics. So when we meet her where we are, we're meeting her where she is in education and beliefs. What education and beliefs does she have about health? What myths does she hold? What social norms does she adhere to? How does taboo, stigma, and shame shape her daily life? What access does she have? Does she have access to healthcare, mental health services? Does she have access to the internet, online communities, in-person support groups? What resources does she have? Does she have access to basic resources? What kind of time, money, what sort of community, family, friends, or even adequate transportation does she have? And then ultimately, what is the cost? And I'm not talking about the cost in terms of financial spend, but what is the cost of the problem that you are trying to solve on her quality of life, her relationships, career, ability to get childcare, or decision to have children, or be able to care to aging relatives, which generally does end up resting on women's shoulders. So how do we get this information? We ask the right questions and we shut up and listen. So for example, if we're looking to interview potential users or potential customers, a great example of a way to get that information would be a yes or no question. So for example, have you ever experienced pelvic health issues? Yes or no. You can get a nice tidy statistic, which is always great. And it's a great way to get that attention there. But instead, when you're thinking about marketing to someone who has experienced pelvic health issues, what you want to be able to ask is an open-ended question. So something more along the lines of, tell me about a time where your pelvic health made it difficult for you to live the way you prefer. And now you have a tidy statistic with a comprehensive information that includes the why, what, where, and how. And you will find surprises that will be able to lead you in order to create a profile of where she is and where you can meet her and help her. And it's imperative that we're able to present a granular understanding of her life. Oops, sorry. That we're able to affirm and echo her concerns and aspirations, and to understand how and when your solution fits into her life, not just how we can target and sell a product to her. And then to be able to bring education based on where she is, not just what you think she needs to know. How do we get this information? We compensate her for her time. This isn't a new marketing strategy to be able to offer, discount on your products, gift cards, or cash. But when we think about specifically women doing 75% of all unpaid work, and again, I do have my Invisible Women book recommendation in there, but Lisa cut me to the chase. Definitely check out that book to understand and have more examples from healthcare and beyond, how we fail to meet women where they are. And also, we do give a lot of attention in marketing to influencers and celebrity endorsements and online ads. Although these are critical tools in our marketing, we have to remember that the most important and effective brand ambassadors are the women who use our products. And we need to connect with her before, during, and after you create these products. So similar to what Petra said, to be able to create the product, you have to connect with her. But we also need to connect with her to continue to market with her. And if we meet women where they are and learn from them, take what they're living and taking that and what they're saying and make our decisions on how to market to them and to speak to her to create this narrative, this can be a way to help women live happier, healthier, and longer lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan. And yeah, totally agree. I think that's relatable, that idea of meeting women where they are in terms of product as well, and a whole range of things, not just marketing. Larissa, I'm going to hand it.
Yes. Great. Actually, I think that is a perfect segue of what I'll be talking about. So last but not least, right? So once again, I'm Dr. Larissa Ferdinand, and I actually have a wonderful pleasure of helping women in all stages of menopause improve their hormone balance so they can lead powerful, proactive, performance-driven lives. And today I want to look at it from the lens of performance and to share with you not only from this perspective and how we move this needle within this community, because there have been some great innovations, ideas. And like I said before, I think that's been a good segue from the last speaker, because this is motivated based on understanding women and clients much better. And I want to also share with you an important business strategy that I've incorporated not only with my clients and patients, but how I'm able to share as a consultant in this sector. So I did a simple question. Sometimes when we're looking at the bigger picture, oftentimes we have to ask ourselves a simple question to the population we serve. And I asked them in 1 to 2 sentences, how would you describe performance, or how do you feel like you show up every day in your daily activities, and what does that mean to you? And this is important because oftentimes as we guide our communities from what a mentor told me, from pain island to pleasure island, there's a journey and some unspoken journeys that we are still trying to understand. And I serve a very diverse community of people as a Florida-based physician. And the response had to do with knowing what the most important things and doing them in a timely manner. And these are women who are seeking out an OBGYN or hormone advice or assistance in perimenopausal times. They still want to feel energetic and with a positive attitude. The fact that, yes, I want good sleep, but the why behind it is because I have curveballs that come my way and I want to be prepared. Knowing that I can go through an entire day and have a sense of accomplishment. Authentically understanding that they're showing up and being present and fully accepted and carrying out their purpose and their passions. And I love this, just getting stuff done and the ability to get it done and what you set out during the day. Because what I found in following a lot of the data and the markers of women adopting many of the wearable devices and the wearable technology and the apps and the innovations is oftentimes they still don't know how that personalized journey really does adapt to them and what their goals and perspectives are for this particular community of women and how to reach the performance levels that matter to them. So what am I talking about when I refer to the perimenopause and beyond community? I think it's a good time to identify that. These are women 40 and up, and they're heading through the change or smack in the middle of it or beyond it, or they just want it to be over. And we've had several speakers to kind of outline what that timeline looks like as far as years and experiences. But also this community, they're envisioning and functioning independently. And I like to use that word a lot because that's relative to the end user's experience. And it's also relative to what women experience within their journey throughout their lifespan and know that they can live the fullest of their golden years like the queen. But many of them are still heading businesses. Women are increasing as far as women-owned businesses and the revenue that they contribute into our economic ecosystems. Then there's simple rules of engagement. I like to make sure to recognize that no matter what, these are women who are beyond mediocrity. They want to live more fulfilled and stronger lives. They're ready to up-level their thinking, but they realize that it may not be encountered in their traditional clinical settings or within their doctor's visits. And they're ready to look outside of the box, and especially from a US point of view, oftentimes this is a sick care paradigm that doesn't necessarily fit them because preventive measures are in place, but not really concurrent with or congruent with what they may see in their research, because this is the age of a lot of technology and information. We're not sure exactly how it may apply to them. And so it comes to a form of using strategy. Strategy is one of the things I like to use as well, of how to strategically to be informed, understand how that information applies to them, and implement those actions, excuse me, so they can be able to achieve the optimal health and not necessarily fit into the status quo. But of course, there comes challenges with it. It's a constant feeling sometimes of having that distorted clarity because of the information or because of incorporating some of those things and understanding there needs to be a guide of, okay, I may look good, but it doesn't feel right inside, or I feel like I'm putting more effort into things and I'm getting less out of it. Or if there's a change in how I'm performing and how I'm doing well in one sector, whether it be finances, but this is a time where I may have difficulty in the health component. And as much as, the fads and the fixes of what's built within certain media avenues of Band-Aid fixes or the guessing game of what actually is appropriate for them, by the time they get in front of their provider or practitioner, which is that know, like, and trust factor, they're at that point of, okay, I know something's off and I can't put my finger on it, but there, might be a conversation of, hey, deal with it, you'll be fine, or the lack of education to deal with certain things. And the actuality, this is a time of reality of transformation for women. It's a bridge into the next breakthrough versus the next breakdown if they do not feel like their problems or the way that they're seeing their problems are actually thought of from a holistic standpoint of really connecting mind, body, spirit. And I always like to say hormones, because I do believe in optimization of them in order to help women live longer and stronger lives. But to also embrace that there's no one size fits all approach, which is regardless been a lot of part of the thread of what we talked about today, which really drives the passion of even doing the level of work that I do, because it is a more personalized experience. It needs to be individualized for a more diverse culture and background, so no woman feels excluded. And then to dominate and understand that normal is not optimal. Those are two different things, and not to minimize those type of concerns for women. So who am I? Just quickly, I am Dr. Larissa Ferdinand. I'm a CEO founder of Estrogen Doctor Company, and I speak from a tone of being a board certified OBGYN and integrating those things within not only a medical practice, but beyond, as implementing not only epigenetics, which is something that is starting to get a lot more pull and understanding, because it does allow that personalized approach, because regardless of many of the threads that are similar for women, perimenopause and beyond, when we're dealing with performance and what is important for them and what matters, it needs to be done in an edge that is more personalized for them according to what is, we've talked about nutritional plans, we've talked about stress components, we've talked about women that may be having menstruation or not menstruation in this time period. Excuse me. And part of that is adding that input into new startups, one including Bossa Bars, which is the menopause energy bar. And this is just a brief thing. And I think the last speaker did a great job, because there are hallmarks within this age period that are so vital. Beyond menstruation and children transitioning and changes in relationships and with themselves, there's a change in mental health and their mood and the motivation of life, and trying to trigger and putting those things together. Let's see. And then 50s and beyond is that noticeable change in the decline of some of the strength and cognitive abilities, the anxiety about aging, or knowing that there's a risk of stroke or accidents or cardiac events, and the significant body changes that may take effect. And all of that has to do with just noticing mentally and physically how that impacts with living longer and stronger. So one of the things that I've incorporated is understanding that no matter it's a bi-directional event when it comes to partnering with women in this journey, and it doesn't necessarily stop at the office visit. The return of investment is on the out of office experience. So incorporating those tools that are more engaging within now the FemTech space, but now it's trying to draw that in with the actual journey of how that connects to their lifespan, health span, and well span, because that scientifically has connected of how the quality of life of women living longer, not just in quantity, but we want to make sure, remember the word independently, or how they would want to perform at these ages as well. And so incorporating metrics and data points and key performance areas it's a lot that we're doing now, but many of the things we talk about in the medical community, it takes about 2 to 3 decades for the shift to actually happen. And so we're hoping that it doesn't have to take that long, where women are speaking about their data points or their Oura ring or their particular sleep patterns, like a morning stock or sharing a recipe. And that's when we know that we've moved the needle a lot in that way, because we're conversing using the same language and everybody understands. And most importantly, the last link is making sure the medical providers as well, because I can tell you this, and this is a truth, that there's a lot more that is innovating in this space as opposed to the education that is even in the spectrum. And I'll speak from a US standpoint with our medical students or our doctors coming out, on top of the restrictions or the restraints that may be within their communities or what their hospital-based providers are able to provide. And most importantly, not being able to really understand those experiences to a certain degree from that performance lens perspective.
Larissa,
yes,
we've run out of time.
Oh, okay,
we need
sorry.
to move on to the Q&A. So
okay, no
I'll give
problem.
you like 30 seconds to wrap up, and then hopefully you can answer some of the questions.
Okay, no problem. So I'll just end with saying that the programs and the things that I do or implement have a lot to do with providing the connecting points for clients or for patients. And that's not only following the KPIs or the key performance indicators, but understanding how that connects with their performance-driven outcomes, what they perceive or what they know to be important for them. And that's when we start connecting the dots of how you can have longevity of any of the tools that you're creating. So, and this is a way to connect with me, and also online through my website, drlarissa.com. Okay, thanks. Sorry about that.
No problem. Thank you. Amazing stuff. So we'll move on swiftly to the Q&A, so we have enough time to answer some questions. The first question we have is for Lisa about Breathe Illo. And the question is, can Breathe predict hormonal derived or cycle derived depression through breath?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Unfortunately, I can't really answer it because we haven't studied this or researched in this field, but I would guess no, actually, because I mean, we can see that there is stress in the breath, because if a woman really breathes faster, then we can see that she's stressed, but with depression, I don't think so.
Thank you. I hope that answered someone's question. And then a kind of bigger question was around the idea that there's real silos in data. So that, you know, there's all of these FemTech companies and they're collecting data, but often they don't share those data sets. And how is it possible to validate and correct that data? Larissa, I wondered if you maybe had something on that in terms of like a more medical perspective around how we should be sharing data. And if not, then I'll ask Lisa as well.
That's okay. You kind of froze for me. Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. It's a question. My internet, I think it keeps saying it's unstable. So just wave at me if
you I'm sorry. I'm in Costa Rica today. So I tried to book in on my vacation. Sorry.
Don't make us jealous. So
the question,
so the question was around like sharing data, and kind of should FemTech companies share data and use that for more like valid research, I guess.
Do you mean between, like, I just want to make sure end user and, oh, okay, as far as sharing data.
Like almost like a universal database.
Yes, but with certain restraints, I think that's very important, because privacy issues have been very much a hold of even a couple of FemTech companies. and other companies in general. So anytime you're dealing with private information or personal information, it needs to be disclosed how it's going to be used, when it's going to be used, what particular areas of research, and it's all about full disclosure. And it's when it comes to patient or client information, that's very, very vital.
Agreed. And I think, yeah, there have been some data issues in the FemTech space more recently, so that's really key. Yeah, Lisa, do you have anything on that about kind of sharing data, or how do you use the data that you collect with Breathe?
Yeah, it's a good question, and we get it asked a lot because it is really also a trust thing for the people using our devices and the apps, because you said it before, there were a lot of issues. So we are making everything completely clear about our data. We don't give it to any third party. I mean, it's also not allowed in the European Union, and we are relying here really on the law side. I'm also the data specialist by myself, and because we are in a medical field, we also need to have one in the company. So yeah, so we are really sensitive with our data. I mean, if a woman actively wants to share it with other apps or with their doctors or anything, she has it in her own hands, and I think this is important too.
Yeah, definitely. I think the security element's so vital, but I feel like there's so much good data in the femtech space. If researchers and kind of women's health specialists could look into that, it might move stuff forward. Susan, I wonder if like in terms of kind of design and marketing and all of that kind of stuff, user data is useful in any way. Would you recommend that to kind of meet women where they are?
Absolutely. And I just want to echo what Dr. Ferdinand said. Like, we definitely need to take considerations in terms of privacy. It's definitely something that we've betrayed a lot of consumers' trust, like even just looking at Facebook, et cetera. For us at High Ivy, like the kind of data that we're collecting, like we're going into Health Canada and FDA approvals and looking at clinical studies and collecting subjective and objective data, which is, when I say subjective, we're talking about, like, again, meeting them where they are. Where are they emotionally? What needs do they have? And using this kind of data to be able to see potential correlations. I think right now, when just going back to your previous question, one thing I'd be so interested in, like, obviously a bunch of these femtech companies can't share all the personal data and kind of what they've collected, but I would love to see some sort of database about, like, what companies in femtech have come together to conduct their own clinical studies and what have those outcomes been. I think like bringing that together is really interesting because obviously like in a lot of cases, private companies are pushing research forward faster and with more vigor than we've seen in the last 100 years.
Yeah, I think it's like an incredible way to kind of plug the gender data gap for sure. Mark, I can see you nodding that, and I wonder, yeah, if you want to come in on this point, how are you using your data? How are you kind of conducting research with it?
This is a very important factor for us. In the first place, having the security, on the other hand, being able to get the data with the user's permission and use it for medical trials internally, or sharing the part that we have permission with the universities, and exchanging anonymous data so we can basically do something about it and get something meaningful out of the data that we have. So as Susan mentioned, we need to collaborate on that, and probably based on the new laws that we see in the European Union, on one hand, we need to see the same regulatory in the US, because right now we don't have that. And on the other hand, we need more support from probably educational institutions, so we can share those data under some supervision, probably from them, educational institutions, so we can get something meaningful for the user at the end of the day.
Completely agree. I think there's so much more that can be done in terms of partnerships with academia. And I really, the question was talking about silos, and I feel like there's such a big silo between academia and FemTech, and such a need to draw those together. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, so I'm going to wrap up really quickly, but big round of applause to all of our panelists. So insightful. I feel like I've gained so much knowledge this evening. So thank you for your time and your contributions. Just to wrap up and say that we can see that FemTech is such an incredible space and is so much more than periods and pregnancy, even though it incorporates that as well. And I think some key takeaways from today is that like women's health is still really, really under-researched. And as much as we try and plug that gender data gap with the amazing resources we have through FemTech companies, it's not enough currently, and there's so much more that we can do to move away from this male-centered healthcare design framework. Also, I think we've seen that stigma and taboo is a huge issue, and the impact that that has on education amongst women and their ability to access services and know to access services, because they just don't, as Rachel said, they can't often label their vagina or their vulva, and just have incredible difficulty talking about those things as well. So I'm really grateful for all of our panelists and the kind of change and the waves that they're making in all of those points. Please feel free to look through the chat. People's LinkedIn profiles are there, and you can follow them and connect with them there. But otherwise, big round of applause again, and thank you all so much for attending.
Great. Well, just a couple of words from me. We would like to extend our great thanks to all of the panelists and the moderator. I think it's very important that we're drawing attention to women's health, and we intend to continue our series of free webinars as well as open access analytical reports. It's been very inspiring to hear our speakers today. I personally learned a lot, and we would like to have collaborations with panelists or audience, anyone interested in the topic. We will be launching FemTech SPV in a month or so, and we'll be investing in companies, and we're opening for discussions and collaborations in that regard. And with that, thank you very much. We will have a recording of this webinar, and we welcome everyone's feedback. And thank you, Terry, panelists, audience, and we'll see each other in not so long, hopefully.
Thank you so much. Bye,
Thanks, everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.